丢人！美国在联合国被多国集体拍桌抗议，没一个人满意美代表。
Just a few years ago, the stock market's at 25,000. Corporate profits are the highest they've been in decades. The rich keep getting richer. And our friends on the other side said, what do we do now? Let's do a tax cut where 83% of it goes to the top 1% of the wealthiest people. Fast forward a few months, global pandemic, 36 million people unemployed, 40% of families who have a worker that makes $40,000 a year and less lose their job last month. 4 million people didn't pay their rent, and the Republican Party says, we don't have any money to help you. Are you kidding me? Where do you guys live? Food lines around the blocks at our food banks in the United States of America. 1 in 5 kids are going hungry. Your party can't even get food to them. This isn't a wish list. If it's a wish list, it's for the working class people. How about the Teamsters that are going to get a pension when this bill passes?
Gentleman's time's expired.
Their pension gets cut in half.
Gentleman's time is expired.
Çalıştırılması ve ekonomik yaptırımların silah gibi kullanılması karşısında hiçbirimiz sessiz kalamayız. Bu çarpık gelişmelerin zararı eninde sonunda her ülkeye dokunacaktır. Dünya ticaret düzeninin tek taraflı kararlarla bozulmasına engel olmak için hep birlikte çalışmalıyız.
Que ha llevado a las oligarquías del continente y a quienes dominan desde Washington a plantearse la dominación y el control del poder político en Venezuela.
El gobierno de los Estados Unidos mantiene hacia Cuba una retórica agresiva y una política dirigida a subvertir el sistema político, económico, social y cultural de mi país, contrario a los intereses de ambos pueblos.
وقوضت حل الدولتين وكشفت زيف ادعاءاتها بالحرص على الأوضاع الإنسانية للفلسطينيين وما يثير السخرية أن الإدارة الأمريكية لا تزال تتحدث عما تسميه صفقة العصر.
Thank you very much, Mr. President Zelensky, have you felt any pressure from President Trump to investigate Joe Biden and Hunter Biden?
I think you read everything. So I think you read text. I'm sorry, but I don't want to be involved to democratic, open elections of USA. No, you heard that we had, I think, good phone call. It was normal. We spoke about many things, and so I think, and you read it, that nobody pushed me. Yes.
In other words, no pressure.
Mr. President Zelensky, do you have...
Because you know what? There was no pressure. And you know there was, and by the way, you know there was no pressure. All you have to do is see it, what went on the call. But you know that. But you could ask the question, and I appreciate the answer. Go ahead.
President Zelensky.
Would you like President Zelensky to do more on Joe Biden and investigate?
No, I want him to do whatever he can. But whatever he can do in terms of corruption, because the corruption's
the same thing that we've done, which is
no, it's not.
All around the world.
They are far more humanistic than the United States ever was.
Really? Okay.
Absolutely no need to.
Of course.
Who determines what is an excessive maritime claim? Well, who determines excessive?
So,
It is consistent with the law of the sea. It's the international understanding of what innocent passage is.
The United States is not a party to the UNCLOS. Isn't that correct?
So we have conducted freedom of navigations. Yeah. So
do China, Taiwan, and the Philippines say that their own claims are excessive? It seems to me that you have just decided that that they're excessive because under the terms of a treaty to which you're not a party.
So they have asserted requirements for vessels transiting, and it is inconsistent with international law of the sea. The U.S. operation, our freedom of navigation challenges that as these signatories.
But you didn't. But you ignored them. Basically, this ship just barged in. Without
consistent with international law.
But I mean, you didn't notify anybody.
No, we
you just went in. But that's my question is, who decides whether a claim is excessive?
So it is the international law of the sea. It's my understanding that determines this.
You're not a party to the international law.
But this is a common understanding among these claimants.
Well, do they say that their own claims are excessive?
So there's 3 nations that have.
Any of them accept you're saying that their claim is excessive?
So we were operating in accordance with international maritime law.
Do any of them agree with you that their own claims are excessive?
I would ask them on that.
If they don't, then I don't.
Both the United States and China will have a more prosperous future if we can achieve a level economic playing field. Right now, unfortunately, it is a very one-sided and unfair one. But I don't blame China. After all, who can blame a country for being able to take advantage of another country for the benefit of its citizens? I give China great credit. But in actuality, I do blame past administrations for allowing this out-of-control trade deficit to take place and to grow. We have to fix this because it just doesn't work for our great American companies, and it doesn't work for our great American workers. It is just not.
In the last couple of days. Let me finish. You are interviewing me. You should let me finish. Give me a chance to finish my answer.
Please, go ahead.
I must ask you not to confuse and fuse the issues, but keep talking about making allegations about the mainland. I ask you to come back to the situation in Hong Kong and don't allow your bias to color your reports on Hong Kong. That's totally unfair to Hong Kong people.
I'm really confused by this. I'm surprised because you surely must have been watching as socialists have been beaten over and over again by nationalists. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that rather than turn inwards and argue about resources, we should look outwards to other countries and other parts of the world where they've had to deal with divisive nationalism and seek to discover the lessons from when, in those brief moments in history, in places like Catalonia and Quebec, we have managed to go and beat narrow, divisive nationalism with a social justice
tell
agenda.
you that they believe their kind of nationalism, which isn't a hard right nationalism, their kind of nationalism goes hand in hand with social justice.
Well, I think it suits the Scottish nationalists, actually, to keep this argument going about independence, because while the entire conversation in Scotland is focused on the Constitution, nobody's paying attention to their record, which is frankly appalling.
Would you oppose or support another referendum on independence?
No, I don't support another referendum on independence. And I think I've been fairly consistent about that, whether it's Brexit or the Scottish independence referendum. I think once you ask people to decide and they make a decision, the job then is to pull together. And frankly, to be honest, I think this country has had enough of referendums.
I'm an Air Force veteran here with an Army veteran. We're just wondering why we should vote for someone who voted for a war and enabled a war. Killed thousands of our brothers and sisters. Countless Iraqi civilians. You enabled that war. You also gave a medal to a man who enabled that war and caused that war. Your blood is on your hands as well. You're disqualified. You're disqualified. My friends are dead.
So my son who was in Iraq. Okay? For years. That doesn't matter, right? You don't think it matters to me. It matters a lot to me. Let me tell
I'm
you.
sure it does.
Okay.
And I'm not going after your son.
You better not.
I'm not. No, I'm not going after your son. You're disqualified, sir. Disqualified. The blood is on your hands. Blood is on your hands. No. My brothers and sisters died in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he enabled that to happen. He enabled that to happen. He is disqualified. He is disqualified. No way he can be president. They are dead. Millions are dead in Iraq. He will not be allowed to be president. Disqualified. Trump is more anti-war than you.
Fucking bullshit. Fucking imperialist. We actually fought in your damn wars. We fought in your wars. You sent us to hurt civilians. We hurt civilians. You pushed us out to do.
States. This is they combine the nominal GDP with the PPP, right? But look at China here. Here's China in the green, right? It's like, yo, man, here we are. China. Here's China going this way, and by all accounts, the U.S. is going this way, and China is going this way. And this is big. This is big because look at China here. This is when I was your age, sitting in classes, taking my first sociology class, here was China, and there was the United States. China was barely getting off the ground, and just look, man, look at that. Look at, in a short period of time, and nothing, in 20 years, here. And if you're not thinking about China, if you're thinking about the U.S., if you're thinking about your future, and you're not thinking about China, and you're not paying attention to what's going on with the dragon, you're missing out. You are missing something really, really, really important.
Chinese don't know that we can't land a spaceship on the dark side of the moon? Do you think the Russians don't know that for the first time since John Glenn was sent up to orbit this planet, America cannot put a person into space without asking the Russians to do it? Do you think the rest of the world doesn't know that we're not investing in our infrastructure? That we're not investing in the young generation of Americans? That we're willing to lose the race for artificial intelligence to the Chinese? That we're going to break all of our long-standing alliances since World War II at a moment when China is rising? That China's GDP has quadrupled since 2001, tripled since 2003, doubled since...
From what I've seen, over the last 10 years that I've been in China, is that one very good thing about the government is that they promote this idea that we never can rest. There are challenges facing China. There's the basic question of growth. Where is growth going to come from now? There is, of course, the dual circulation strategy. That's very hopeful. There's the Belt and Road Initiative, but there are some very big challenges. The population is aging, and it is not growing. The United States is pushing back against certain areas of technology and trying to bring its allies together to push back against Chinese success in certain areas of technology. So what is China?
Michael, speaking of that, so how is China's new 5-year plan relevant or significant to the rest of the world? And as you mentioned, so should other countries worry about it or support it?
I think that that other countries should work constructively.
The Chinese are likely to be #1 superpower economically within the next few years. But the main thing that he emphasized to me was, the main purpose of his call was to say very frankly to me on private line that the Chinese were getting way ahead of the United States in many ways. That I replied to President Trump that in the last number of years since 1949 when we normalized relations, the United States had been at constant war with Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and Yemen and many other countries. Almost constant war. The expert economists estimated that we had spent about $3 trillion on those wars. China has not been in combat with anybody since 1949.
例子，朋友们，咱们学校的审核率就是高，别的哪个学校他觉得咱们审核率高了？你有本事，你把你老师的积极性调动起来，你成绩比我们强，咱们佩服人家，有道理吗？但是朋友们撒响广告，不断的诋毁我们学校，我认为那就是下三滥的手段了。大家说有道理吗？有本事正当的手段，所以西方的胸怀是很窄的，他哪有我们这个民族的胸怀？苹果手机好了，卖腰子也去买。我们中国没有说把乔布斯给抓了，没有把他的姑娘给抓了，不会干这事。咱不如人家，就老老实实的承认咱不如人家，咱向人家学。但是呢，今天不如他们，将来可以比他们强。大家说有道理吗？美国是什么？老子就是第一，我是第一时候也是第一，我不是第一，你想成为第一，我搞你，我也不能让你成为第一。这就是非常极端、心胸狭窄、打压其他民族、容不得别人优秀。实际上你是打压不住的。讲到这里以后
overriding this, or primary in relationship to this, is the continuity of China. Extraordinary continuity. Today, you still regard the great sages like Confucius and Mencius and many others as very relevant to your debates in China about what's happening and where to go and how to behave and how to govern and so on. What this represents is a kind of new kind of wisdom. Right, my sixth point is about globalization. China is a great believer in globalization. It's been a huge beneficiary from globalization. China's approach to globalization has essentially been inclusive. Who were the greatest beneficiaries, in my view, in China from globalization? It was over half the population that were lifted out of poverty. That's a very different picture from the way globalization worked in the United States.